Noah Ellis was 200 feet underwater when the Pacific seafloor split open. The marine biologist had spent 6 months alone in the Kermadec Research Station studying deep-sea organisms. The magnitude 7.8 quake turned his laboratory into a steel tomb in 12 seconds. Every exit jammed, oxygen leaking, and his only escape meant rewiring a flooded power grid that could blow the station apart or save his life. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Noah's morning started the way every morning had for the past 6 months. Checking the life support systems before his coffee finished brewing. The lab module hummed around him, a steady mechanical heartbeat that used to comfort him. Now it just reminded him how far he was from everything that mattered. He ran through the diagnostic checklist on his tablet. Oxygen recyclers at 96% efficiency, water filtration nominal, power grid stable across all 3 modules. The Kermadec station was a marvel of engineering. 3 interconnected cylinders bolted to a seamount shelf 200 feet below the Pacific surface. Lab module where he lived and worked. Living quarters with sleeping berth and galley. Equipment bay housing the moon pool. Dive gear in the station's only exit to the surface. "Morning, Noah." Dr. Chen's face appeared on the video monitor, pixelated from the satellite connection. "Tell me you have good news." Noah held up a specimen jar containing a translucent amphipod the size of his thumb. Bioluminescent organs glowed faint blue along its segmented body. Gigantophasma profundus. 3rd specimen collected. Chen, this species was thought to be extinct. The board meets in 3 months. Chen's expression didn't match Noah's enthusiasm. "They're going to pull funding. 1 amphipod isn't enough to justify keeping you down there. Then I'll find more." Noah set the jar down harder than intended. "This research matters. Does it matter more than seeing your daughter?" Chen's voice softened. "Emma asked about you again. Sarah says she's struggling with you being gone." Noah's jaw tightened. "I'll call her this weekend." "You said that last weekend." Chen sighed. "Look, I'm not your therapist. Just get me something concrete I can show the board." 3 months, Noah." The screen went dark. Noah stared at his reflection in the black monitor. 41 years old and living in a steel tube at the bottom of the ocean. When had passion for his work become escape from his failures? He moved to the equipment bay pressure door and spun the manual lock. The heavy seal hissed open. Inside, his dive suit hung ready for today's collection run. He'd spotted a promising vent cluster yesterday, 40 meters from the station. If the amphipods were breeding there, he could collect enough specimens to... The lights flickered. Noah froze. Electrical fluctuations weren't uncommon, but something felt wrong. He pulled up the power grid diagnostic on his tablet. Module 2 showed a minor voltage drop. Probably nothing. Still, his Navy training whispered warnings he'd learned to trust. He made a mental note to check the circuits after his dive. Right now he had work to do. Work that mattered. Work that made the isolation bearable. Noah sealed the pressure door behind him and headed for his dive gear. Outside the station's viewport, the deep Pacific waited in eternal darkness. He'd made this dive dozens of times. Routine, safe, just another morning in paradise. The coffee maker beeped behind him. He'd forgotten about it entirely. The dive suit felt like a second skin after 6 months of daily excursions. Noah ran through the pre-dive checklist with mechanical precision. Seal integrity, oxygen flow, communication system, tether line. Every item checked twice. Shortcuts killed people at depth. He stood at the edge of the moon pool, a circular opening in the equipment bay floor that connected directly to the ocean. Water lapped against the sides, dark and cold. His headlamp beam barely penetrated 3 feet. "Surface team, this is Kermadec Station. Beginning dive at 0740. Noah's voice echoed in his helmet. Static. Then a response from the support vessel 40 miles away. "Copy that, Noah. Weather's clear. Currents minimal. You're good for 2 hours." 2 hours, more than enough time to collect specimens and return. Noah clipped his sample containers to his belt and stepped into the moon pool. The water swallowed him instantly, pressure building as he descended the guide rope bolted to the station's exterior. At 30 feet down, he could see the full structure of Kermadec Station. 3 massive cylinders connected by reinforced collars, the whole assembly anchored to the C-mount with titanium cables, thick as his arm. Lights from the viewports cast pale rectangles into the murk. His home, his prison, depending on the day. The volcanic vent cluster lay northeast of the station, marked on his navigation unit. Noah released the guide rope and kicked toward it, his tether line playing out behind him. The weight of the ocean pressed against his suit. 200 feet of water sat between him and air he could breathe without equipment. The thought used to terrify him. Now it barely registered. Something moved in his peripheral vision. Noah turned his head, beam sweeping across empty water. Probably a fish. The deep ocean played tricks on your eyes and mind. 6 months of isolation meant he talked to himself more than he'd admit in his reports. The vent came into view, a crack in the seamount's rock face, surrounded by bacterial mats and tube worms. Hot water shimmered as it met cold ocean, and there, crawling across the rock, dozens of the amphipods he'd been searching for. Noah's pulse quickened. This was it. This was what Chen needed to show the board. He maneuvered closer, sample container ready. His navigation unit chirped a warning. Minor seismic activity detected. Noah glanced at the reading, magnitude 2.1. Background noise in a volcanic region, nothing to worry about. He collected the first amphipod, then a second. Beautiful creatures adapted to crushing pressure and near-freezing temperatures. Evolution's masterpiece. Sarah never understood why he cared so much about tiny shrimp in the dark. Emma had once, before he'd left for this assignment. The ground moved, not a tremor, a shift. The rock face in front of him cracked, a sound like a gunshot traveling through the water. Noah's training kicked in. He grabbed the guideline, prepared to abort the dive. Then the world tore itself apart. The seafloor bucked like a living thing. Noah's body whipped sideways as the tether line snapped taut, then went slack. Massive boulders tumbled past him in slow motion, churning sediment into an impenetrable cloud. He couldn't see the station, couldn't see anything beyond 3 feet of brown murk. His radio exploded with noise. Noah, we're reading magnitude 7.8. Get inside now. The transmission cut to static. Noah kicked hard for where the station should be, navigation unit spinning uselessly as the compass lost its bearing. The shaking intensified. Through the sediment cloud, he caught a glimpse of light, a viewport. He swam toward it like a drowning man reaching for shore. The station tilted. Metal screamed underwater, a sound that shouldn't exist. The entire structure lurched 15 degrees to starboard as mooring cables failed. Noah slammed into the exterior hull, his sample containers shattering against his belt. He grabbed a maintenance ladder welded to the station's skin and held on as the quake tried to shake him loose. 12 seconds. The longest 12 seconds of his life. Then the shaking stopped. Noah's breath came in ragged gasps inside his helmet. The station had settled at an angle, lights still on but flickering. Through the murk, he could see one of the mooring cables had snapped completely. The others held, but for how long? He pulled himself toward the moon pool entrance on the equipment bay's underside. His hands found the access handle and twisted. The hatch opened, thank God, and he hauled himself up into the moon pool chamber. Water poured from his suit as he climbed onto the deck. The entire equipment bay sat at a 20-degree slant. Equipment racks had torn free from their mounts and scattered across the floor. Sparks cascaded from an electrical panel near the ceiling. And there, on the far wall, water leaked from a crack in the hull seal. Not a spray, a steady stream. Noah hit the emergency alarm. Klaxons wailed through the station. He stripped off his dive helmet and ran for the pressure door connecting to the lab module. The manual lock wouldn't turn. He threw his weight against it. Nothing. Jam from the structural shift. Come on! Noah grabbed the wheel with both hands and heaved. Metal groaned but held. The door stayed shut. Behind him, water pooled on the angled floor, flowing downward toward the lower equipment bay where the backup generator sat. The leak was getting worse. He could hear it, a hissing that meant pressure building somewhere it shouldn't be. Noah's mind raced through options. The lab module held his communication equipment, emergency supplies, everything he needed to call for help. But he was trapped in equipment bay with rising water and failing power. His eyes found the backup generator access hatch in the floor, still sealed. If he could get power to the door controls, Maybe force them open electrically instead of manually, but that meant going down into the flooded lower bay. That meant working with live electrical systems in salt water. That meant one wrong move would kill him faster than drowning. Noah pulled out his waterproof tablet and called up the station schematics. His hands shook as he traced the power grid layout. Main power was dead. The quake had severed the primary feed from the surface relay. But the backup diesel generator in the lower bay could provide enough juice to run the door systems for 20 minutes, maybe 30 if he was lucky. The problem was getting to it. The lower bay access hatch sat under 2 feet of rising water now, and even if he made it down there, the electrical panel might already be fried from saltwater exposure. One spark in the wrong place, and the whole system would short out, leaving him trapped with no way to open any doors. He checked his dive suit's air gauge. 40 minutes remaining. Not enough for a slow, careful approach. He'd have to move fast. Noah's radio crackled with static. He grabbed it, hope flaring in his chest. "Surface team, do you copy? This is Kermadec Station. Emergency situation." Nothing but white noise. The quake had either destroyed the relay buoy or knocked it offline. He was alone, 200 feet underwater in a crippled station with no way to call for help. He forced himself to think. The Navy had drilled emergency protocols into him until they became reflex. Assess the situation. Identify immediate threats. Prioritize actions. Execute. Immediate threats. Hull breach leaking water into equipment bay. Jammed pressure door blocking access to lab module. No communication with surface. Station structural integrity compromised. The water had reached his ankles now, flowing downward across the tilted floor toward the lower bay access hatch. In 10 minutes, maybe 15, the lower bay would be completely flooded. The backup generator would be underwater. His one chance to restore power would be gone. Noah splashed through the rising water to an equipment locker that had somehow stayed bolted to the wall. Inside, he found what he needed: waterproof work lights, electrical tape, wire cutters, a voltage tester, tools for maintenance work he'd performed a dozen times in normal conditions. Nothing about this was normal. He strapped the tools to his belt and moved to the lower bay hatch. Water sloshed over the edges, pouring down into the darkness below. Noah clicked on his headlamp and peered through the opening. The ladder descended 15 feet into black water. He could see the top of the backup generator, still above the waterline but not for long. His dive helmet sat where he'd dropped it. Noah picked it up, checked the seal, and locked it onto his suit. The air gauge read 38 minutes. He'd need most of that just to rewire the electrical panel, assuming nothing went wrong. Everything was already wrong. Noah lowered himself through the hatch, boots finding the ladder rungs. The water rose to his waist, then his chest. Cold penetrated his suit despite the insulation. He descended another 3 rungs, and his boots hit the lower bay deck, now completely submerged. The backup generator sat against the far wall, a diesel-powered beast the size of a refrigerator. Next to it, the electrical distribution panel hung open, circuits exposed. Water lapped at the bottom edge of the panel. In 5 minutes, it would be underwater. Noah waded toward it, headlamp beam cutting through murky water. His breathing echoed loud in the helmet. Stay calm, move methodically, one step at a time. He reached the panel and examined the circuits. 3 main breakers controlled power distribution to the station modules. All 3 had tripped during the quake. Simple fix, just reset them and start the generator. Except the lowest breaker sat in 6 inches of water now. Salt water, conductive. If he reset that breaker while it was wet, the current would arc through the water. Through him, 220 volts straight to his heart. Noah stared at the breaker, at the rising water, at his air gauge ticking down. He had to make a choice. Noah pulled the electrical tape from his belt. His instructors at Coronado had taught him field-expedient solutions to impossible problems. This qualified. He ripped off a 2-foot strip of tape and wrapped it around the bottom breaker's metal housing, building up layers until the switch mechanism was completely sealed. Not perfect insulation, but it might prevent a direct short, might keep him alive long enough to finish the job. The water reached his knees now, rising faster. He grabbed the voltage tester and touched the probes to the panel's metal frame. The readout stayed dark. No current. The breakers were off. The system dead. Safe to work with. for now. Noah moved to the generator and found the manual start crank. He pulled it once. The diesel engine coughed but didn't catch. He pulled again, harder. Nothing. Salt water must have gotten into the fuel line during the quake. "Come on!" Noah's voice bounced inside his helmet. "Don't do this to me!" Third pull. The engine sputtered, died. Fourth pull. Fifth. His arm burned with the effort. The water climbed to his thighs. Sixth pull. The generator roared to life, belching black smoke that bubbled up through the flooded bay. The sound was beautiful. Power. He had power. Now came the dangerous part. Noah waded back to the electrical panel. The 3 breakers sat in sequence: top, middle, bottom. He needed all 3 reset to route power to the door control systems. Standard procedure was to flip them in order, grounding himself properly between each throw. Standard procedure assumed you weren't standing in conductive salt water. He reached for the top breaker first, dry above the waterline. His gloved fingers found the switch and pushed it up. It clicked into place with a satisfying chunk. The panel's indicator light glowed green. 1 down. The middle breaker sat at water level now, waves lapping over it. Noah wrapped another layer of tape around his glove, praying rubber and vinyl would be enough insulation. He gripped the breaker and shoved it upward. Sparks erupted from the housing. A jolt ran through his arm, every muscle clenching. Not enough to kill, but enough to hurt. He yanked his hand back, gasping. The breaker had reset. The indicator showed green. 2 down. The bottom breaker disappeared under 8 inches of water. Noah stared at it through the murk. This was the one that controlled the equipment bay door systems. The one he absolutely needed. The one that would definitely electrocute him if anything went wrong. His air gauge read 29 minutes. The water kept rising. Every second he delayed made the situation worse. Noah thought about Emma, about the promise he'd made to call her this weekend, about how she'd asked him once why he cared more about sea creatures than her. He'd said she was wrong, said she'd understand when she was older, said his work mattered. What mattered was getting out of this station alive. What mattered was keeping his promises. Noah took 3 deep breaths, hyperventilating to flood his system with oxygen. Then he plunged his hand into the water and grabbed the breaker. Current slammed through Noah's body like a freight train. Every muscle locked rigid. His jaw clenched so hard he thought his teeth would shatter. The voltage tester he'd clipped to his belt sparked and died. Through the pain, through the white noise filling his brain, one thought remained. Push the breaker up. His hand moved, inch by agonizing inch. The switch resisted, corroded from salt exposure. Noah's arm trembled violently, but he kept pushing. The world narrowed to that single point of contact between his glove and the metal switch. The breaker clicked home. Noah's hand spasmed open and he staggered backward, crashing into the generator. His heart hammered arrhythmically against his ribs. He couldn't catch his breath, couldn't think. The electrical shock had scrambled every nerve in his body, but the panel showed 3 green lights. All breakers reset, power flowing to all station systems. He gave himself 10 seconds to recover, 10 seconds of gasping inside his helmet while his vision cleared and his heartbeat steadied. 10 seconds he couldn't afford, but took anyway because the alternative was passing out in rising water. The lower bay was chest deep now. Noah pushed off the generator and waded toward the ladder. His legs barely responded. The shock had done something to his nervous system. Messages from his brain weren't reaching his muscles properly. He grabbed the ladder rung and pulled himself up one-handed. His tablet was waterproof, but the screen showed damage from the electrical surge. Cracks spiderwebbed across the display. He pulled it from his belt and checked the station systems. Equipment bay pressure doors showed operational status. Green. He could open it now, if he could reach it. Noah climbed out of the lower bay hatch into equipment bay proper. Water had risen to mid-shin here, still flowing downward but slower. The hull breach was losing pressure as exterior and interior equalized. Small mercy. He splashed toward the pressure door connecting to lab module. The control panel beside it glowed with fresh power. Noah's hand hovered over the release button. Wait! The lab module sat on the other side of this door. If it had flooded during the quake, Opening the door would send thousands of gallons rushing into equipment bay, would trap him here with no escape route. But if he didn't open it, he had no access to communication equipment, no way to call for rescue, no supplies beyond what he carried. The viewport next to the door was too small to see much. Noah pressed his face against the thick glass and peered through. The lab module looked intact, tilted like equipment bay but not flooded. He could see his coffee mug sitting on the workstation where he'd left it. That decided it. Noah hit the release button. Hydraulics groaned as the pressure door's locking mechanism disengaged. He grabbed the manual wheel and turned. The door swung inward. Water rushed through the opening. Not a flood, but drainage from equipment bay seeking the lower point. Noah stepped through into the lab module and sealed the door behind him. His primary workspace, 6 months of research, every specimen he'd collected, every data file, every piece of equipment he needed to complete his mission. And in the corner, the emergency communication station, still powered, still functional. Noah crossed to it and activated the long-range radio. Static filled his helmet speakers. He adjusted the frequency, searching for the emergency band. Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. This is Kermadec Research Station. Magnitude 7.8 earthquake. Station damage. Requesting immediate evacuation. Do you copy? Static. He tried again. Any station, this is Kermadec. I need rescue. Please respond. Nothing but empty air. This story takes time to craft. If you're enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Noah cycled through every frequency. Commercial bands, military channels, emergency frequencies. Static on all of them. The relay buoy that connected him to the surface world was either destroyed or knocked so far off position it couldn't pick up his signal. He was alone. Truly alone. The lab module's emergency oxygen supply would keep him alive for 72 hours, maybe 90 if he rationed it. But rescue wouldn't come in 3 days. The quake had probably triggered tsunami warnings across the Pacific. Every rescue vessel would be dealing with coastal emergencies. A single researcher trapped in an underwater station wouldn't make the priority list, if anyone even knew he needed rescuing. Noah pulled off his dive helmet and set it on the workstation. His hands were still shaking from the electrical shock. He flexed his fingers, testing for nerve damage. Everything worked but felt wrong, like his body belonged to someone else. The station groaned around him, metal under stress, settling into its new tilted position. How long before the remaining mooring cables failed? How long before the whole structure collapsed, or the hull breach widened into catastrophic flooding? He needed to get to the surface. Now. Not in 3 days when rescue might arrive. The escape hatch sat in equipment bay, the station's only exit, a vertical tube that ran from the equipment bay ceiling to a surface buoy 200 feet up. Normally, you'd climb into the tube, seal the bottom hatch, flood the chamber to equalize pressure, then open the top hatch and ascend. Simple. Safe. Designed for exactly this situation. Noah moved back to the pressure door and opened it. Equipment bay looked worse than when he'd left it 5 minutes ago. More water had leaked in. Sparks still cascaded from the damaged electrical panel. And there, on the far wall near the ceiling, the escape hatch gleamed in his headlamp beam. He waded across the bay and climbed the access ladder welded to the wall. The escape hatch control panel sat at eye level. Green lights across the board. Operational. Noah pressed the status check button. The display lit up with diagnostics. Bottom hatch, sealed. Check. Pressure equalization system, functional. Check. Top hatch mechanism, error. Mechanical jam detected. Noah's stomach dropped. He read the diagnostic again, hoping he'd misunderstood. The top hatch, the one that opened to the ocean surface, was jammed shut. Some piece of debris from the quake had lodged in the mechanism. The escape tube was a dead end. He could climb inside, flood the chamber, equalize pressure. But when he reached the top, he'd be trapped in a flooded tube with no way out. He'd drown 200 feet from air he could breathe. Noah descended the ladder and stood in ankle-deep water, staring at his options. The jammed escape hatch, the flooded equipment bay, the cracked hull leaking more water every minute. the communication system that couldn't reach anyone. Every path led to the same conclusion. He was going to die down here. Unless... Noah pulled up the station schematics on his cracked tablet. The escape hatch had an external manual override, a crank mechanism on the outside of the tube near the top. If someone was outside the station at that depth, they could force the hatch open manually. Someone like him. He'd have to exit through the moon pool. Free dive 200 feet up the outside of the station, find the manual override in the dark, crank it open while holding his breath, then swim back down, enter the escape tube from inside, and make the ascent properly. His longest breath hold was 3 minutes and 40 seconds. He'd need at least 4 minutes for this plan. It was impossible. It was his only chance. Noah sat on the lab module floor and forced himself to think clearly. 4 minutes underwater without equipment. Impossible became possible when you broke it into steps. Step 1. Hyperventilate to saturate his blood with oxygen. 2 minutes of controlled breathing could buy him an extra 30 seconds underwater. Step 2. Exit the moon pool and ascend the station's exterior. 40 seconds if he kicked hard. Step 3. Locate the manual override valve. The schematics showed it near the top of the escape tube, marked with reflective paint. 20 seconds to find it in the dark. Step 4. Crank the valve open. The mechanism required 16 full rotations to release the hatch. He'd practiced similar valves during Navy training. 45 seconds minimum. Step 5. Descend back to the moon pool. 40 seconds down. Step 6. Get inside before his lungs forced him to inhale water. Total time, 2 minutes and 45 seconds. Add 30 seconds for navigation errors and problems. 3 minutes, 15 seconds. Still 25 seconds under his personal record. Achievable. Barely. Noah moved to the equipment locker and pulled out his backup dive knife. 8 inches of steel, serrated edge, designed to cut through fishing nets and kelp. He strapped it to his calf. If he got tangled in debris on the ascent, the knife might save him. He found a chemical light stick and cracked it. Pale green glow filled his palm. He clipped it to his belt, a beacon to help him find the moon pool on the way back down. In the darkness and disorientation of oxygen deprivation, he'd need every advantage. His dive suit lay where he'd dropped it. Noah stripped down to his compression layer and left the suit behind. Less drag meant faster movement. The cold would hurt, but speed mattered more than comfort. He pulled his dive mask on and spit into it, rubbing the saliva across the lens to prevent fogging. An old trick from his Navy days. Small details that kept you alive. Noah stood at the pressure door, looking back at the lab module one last time. 6 months of research. Specimens he'd never see again. Data that might have mattered to someone, somewhere. All of it meaningless if he couldn't get out. He opened the door and stepped into equipment bay. Water had risen to his knees now. The hull breach was winning. In an hour, maybe 2, the entire bay would be flooded. The backup generator would fail. The lights would die, and he'd be trapped in darkness, waiting for the air to run out. Noah waded to the moon pool. Dark water filled the circular opening, perfectly still. He sat on the edge and dangled his legs in. The cold bit through his compression layer immediately. He closed his eyes and began the breathing sequence. Deep inhale through the nose, hold for 2 seconds, exhale through the mouth. Repeat. His heart rate slowed. Oxygen saturated his blood. His body prepared for what came next. Navy instructors had taught him the danger zone started at 2 minutes. At 3 minutes, voluntary control began to fail. At 4 minutes, blackout was almost certain. At 5 minutes, brain damage. He had 1 shot, no room for error, no second chances. Noah checked his watch, took 1 final breath, then slipped into the moon pool and kicked for the surface he couldn't see. The cold hit like a fist. Noah forced himself to ignore it and kicked upward along the station's exterior hull. 30 seconds. His lungs were still comfortable, oxygen reserves high. He could do this. The station's emergency lights cast dim rectangles into the black water. He used them to navigate, following the curve of the cylindrical modules upward. Equipment bay, living quarters. The escape tube should be just above, mounted to the station's highest point. 45 seconds. His chest started to tighten. Normal. Expected. He kicked harder. There, a reflective stripe gleamed in his headlamp beam. The escape tube's exterior housing, a steel cylinder welded to the station's roof. Noah grabbed a maintenance handle and pulled himself along the tube's length, searching for the manual override. 1 minute. The urge to breathe grew stronger, not painful yet, but insistent. His body wanted air. He told it to wait. The valve sat near the top of the tube, exactly where the schematics showed. A wheel mechanism the size of a dinner plate, painted safety orange with a locking pin securing it in place. Noah grabbed the pin and yanked. It didn't move. Corroded. Salt water and pressure had welded it shut. 1 minute, 15 seconds. Panic tried to claw its way up his throat. Noah shoved it down. The pin had to come out. He pulled the dive knife from his calf sheath and wedged the blade under the pin's head. Used it like a pry bar. The pin groaned but held. He levered harder. Metal scraped against metal. The pin shot free. Noah grabbed the valve wheel with both hands and cranked. 1 rotation. 2. The mechanism fought him, stiff from disuse. 3 rotations. 4. His arms burned. 5. 6. 1 minute, 45 seconds. His diaphragm spasmed. The first involuntary contraction, his body trying to force him to breathe. He cranked faster. 7. 8. 9. The urge to inhale became overwhelming. Black spots danced at the edges of his vision. 10 rotations. 11. 12. 2 minutes. His lungs screamed. Every cell in his body demanded oxygen. The valve turned slower. Noah's strength fading. 13. 14. He couldn't see anymore. Couldn't think. His hands moved by memory alone. 15 rotations. The valve locked open. The escape hatch mechanism released with a clunk he felt through the water. 2 minutes at 20 seconds. Noah let go of the wheel and pushed off the station, aiming downward. He had to get back to the moon pool, had to get inside where he could breathe. But his body was shutting down. His kicks grew weaker. The green glow of his chemical light stick swayed somewhere below him, impossibly far. His lungs convulsed violently. In seconds, his mouth would open and water would rush in. 2 minutes, 40 seconds. Noah's vision tunneled to a pinpoint. Emma's face appeared in his mind, her voice asking why he never came home. "I'm trying, sweetheart. I'm trying." His hand touched metal, the station's hull. He pulled himself along it, following the curve downward. His movements were automatic now, his conscious mind almost gone. The green light grew brighter, closer. His fingers found the moon pool's edge. 3 minutes. His mouth open. No air, only water flooding his throat. He was drowning, but his hands kept pulling, dragging his body through the moon pool, opening into equipment bay. His head broke the surface. Noah gasped, choking, vomiting salt water. Air filled his lungs in ragged, painful gulps. He clung to the moon pool's edge, shaking violently. 3 minutes and 8 seconds. His watch showed the time in glowing numbers. Noah pulled himself out of the moon pool and collapsed on the equipment bay floor. Water streamed from his mouth and nose. His entire body shook with hypothermia and oxygen deprivation. He just pushed his body past every safety limit the Navy had drilled into him, but the escape hatch was open. He gave himself 60 seconds to recover, 60 seconds of lying on cold metal while his breathing normalized and feeling returned to his extremities. The water around him had risen to mid-calf now. The hull breach was flooding the bay faster than before. Noah forced himself to stand. His legs wobbled but held. He waded to the escape hatch ladder and looked up at the tube entrance. 20 feet of vertical climb to reach it. Then another 200 feet of ascent inside the tube to reach the surface. The station groaned, a deep, resonant sound that traveled through the hull. One of the mooring cables had just failed. Noah felt the entire structure shift another 5 degrees. Equipment racks crashed to the floor. The lights flickered and nearly died before stabilizing. No time to rest. Noah climbed the ladder. Each rung was agony. His arms had nothing left after cranking the manual override. His legs trembled with exhaustion, but he kept climbing until he reached the escape hatch entrance. The control panel glowed green, all systems operational. The manual override had worked. The top hatch would open now when he reached it. Noah grabbed the entry wheel and cranked it open. The hatch swung inward, revealing the escape tube's interior, a steel cylinder 3 feet in diameter, extending upward into darkness. A ladder ran along one wall. At the top, 200 feet above, the exit hatch waited. Standard procedure required him to enter the tube, seal the bottom hatch, flood the chamber to equalize pressure, then ascend. The flooding process took 5 minutes. 5 minutes he didn't have. The station shifted again. More cable failure. Water poured through the equipment bay hull breach in a steady stream now, no longer just leaking, but actively flooding. In 10 minutes, the entire bay would be underwater. The backup generator would short out. Total power failure. Noah made a decision, skipped the flooding procedure. The top hatch was already open to the ocean. He'd confirmed that when he cranked the manual override. He could climb the tube with air still in it and exit directly into open water at the top. It violated every safety protocol. Rapid pressure changes could rupture his eardrums or cause pulmonary barotrauma, but staying here guaranteed death. Noah pulled himself into the escape tube and started climbing. The ladder rungs were slick with condensation. His hand slipped twice, but he caught himself. Up. Just keep going up. 20 feet. 40 feet. His ears began to hurt as pressure decreased. He worked his jaw, equalizing as he climbed. 60 feet. 80 feet. Below him, a massive crash echoed up the tube. The equipment bay hull had just collapsed. Water roared into the space he'd been standing in minutes ago. Noah climbed faster. 100 feet. 120. His lungs ached. His vision blurred. The electrical shock, the breath hold, the hypothermia, it was all catching up to him. 140 feet. 160. The tube began to flood. Water rushed up from below, pressure equalizing now that the equipment bay was gone. It reached his feet, then his knees, rising fast. Noah looked up. 40 feet to the top hatch. 40 feet to freedom. The water climbed to his waist, his chest, his neck. Noah took one last breath before the water covered his head. Noah climbed underwater, hand over hand up the ladder, lungs already burning. 40 feet. He could make 40 feet. He'd just done 3 minutes, except his body had nothing left to give. The oxygen debt from the previous dive hadn't been repaid. His muscles screamed for air they couldn't get. 35 feet to go. Noah's vision started to tunnel. He focused on the ladder. One rung, then another. His fingers slipped off a rung, and he fell backward, catching himself with his other hand. 30 feet. The pressure was changing as he ascended. His ears popped painfully. 25 feet. His lungs convulsed, the first involuntary contraction, his body demanding he breathe. Noah clamped his jaw shut and climbed faster. 20 feet, black spots swam across his vision. Emma's face appeared in his mind, a hallucination, oxygen deprivation playing tricks. Noah's hand reached for the next rung and found nothing. He looked up through the murky water. The top hatch. He'd reached it. 15 feet of open water between him and the surface. His mouth opened. Water rushed in. Noah was drowning for the second time in an hour, but he kicked upward, through the hatch, into open ocean. The light above grew brighter. Surface. He could see the surface. 10 feet. His lungs filled with water. His body seized. 5 feet. His kicks grew weaker. Arms stopped responding. He was sinking now. The surface he could see was pulling away. Something grabbed his arm. Noah's fading consciousness registered the grip. Strong, pulling him upward. He broke the surface and someone was there, hauling him onto a rescue boat, shouting words he couldn't process. Hands rolled him onto his side. He vomited water. His chest heaved, trying to remember how to breathe air. "We've got you. You're safe. Just breathe." Noah's vision cleared slowly. A rescue diver in full gear knelt beside him. Behind the diver, a New Zealand Coast Guard vessel bobbed in moderate swells. "The quake," Noah gasped. "The station. We know. We've been searching for you for 3 hours. Saw your emergency beacon activate briefly before it went offline." Noah rolled onto his back on the deck and stared at the gray sky. Alive. Impossible, but true. Medical personnel appeared, wrapping him in thermal blankets, checking vitals, inserting an IV line. "We need to get him to the hyperbaric chamber," someone said. "Possible decompression sickness from rapid ascent." The boat's engines roared to life. They were moving, away from the station, away from the research that had consumed 6 months of his life. Noah's last thought before consciousness faded was Emma. He'd made it. He could call her now. Noah woke in the hyperbaric chamber 6 hours later. His body felt like it had been run through a wood chipper. Every muscle ached. His joints throbbed with a dull pain that told him nitrogen bubbles had formed in his bloodstream. The bends. Not severe enough to paralyze him, but enough to hurt. Through the chamber's viewport, he saw a doctor monitoring equipment. The man noticed Noah was awake and spoke through the intercom. "Welcome back. How do you feel?" "Like I drowned twice and got electrocuted." "That's about right, according to your rescue report." The doctor checked his tablet. "You've been in the chamber for 5 hours. We need to keep you here another 3, but you'll make a complete recovery. No permanent damage." Noah closed his eyes. Complete recovery. He'd survived something that should have killed him 5 different ways. "There's someone here who wants to talk to you," the doctor said. "I can patch her through if you're up for it." "Emma." "Your ex-wife, Sarah, actually. She's been calling every hour. Says she has your daughter with her." Noah's chest tightened. "Put her through." The intercom clicked and Sarah's voice filled the chamber, tight with emotion, barely holding together. "Noah. Oh my God, they said the station collapsed." "I'm okay." The words felt inadequate. "I'm alive." "The Coast Guard said you were trapped underwater for hours. You could have died." "I know." Silence on the line. Then Emma's voice, small and scared. "Daddy." Noah's eyes burned. He pressed his palm against the chamber viewport. "Hey, sweetheart, I'm here." "Mom said your station broke, that you almost drowned." "I did, but I'm okay now. I promise." "Are you coming home?" Emma asked. The question carried weight beyond its simple words. Coming home, being present, being her father instead of a voice on video calls. "Yes," Noah said. "I'm coming home. For real this time." "You always say that." The words hit hard. She was right. He'd always said it, always promised, always found another research trip, another reason to stay away. "I know I do," Noah said quietly. "But this time is different. Emma, I almost died down there. And the only thing I could think about was you. Not my research, not my career, just you." Sarah's voice came back. "Noah, we need to talk when you get back. About custody, about Emma spending more time with you. If you're serious." "I am." He'd never been more certain. "I want to be her dad again." "Then we'll figure it out," Sarah said. Her voice softened. "I'm glad you're alive, Noah." The line went quiet. Noah stared at the chamber's curved ceiling. 6 months in an underwater station studying organisms nobody cared about. 6 months running from his failures as a husband and father. And it took nearly dying to realize what mattered. The specimens were gone, the data destroyed. 6 months of research wiped out in 12 seconds. But he was alive, and Emma was waiting. That was enough. The doctor's voice came back through the intercom. "Your vitals are stabilizing nicely. Blood oxygen levels are back to normal. We'll do another pressure cycle in an hour, then you should be clear to leave the chamber by tonight." Noah nodded. Tonight. He'd walk out of this hospital, call Emma, and actually mean it when he said he was coming home. No more 6-month deployments. No more choosing research over his daughter's birthday parties. "The station's gone," the doctor added. "Coast Guard sent a remote probe down this morning. Complete structural collapse. If you'd been inside when the final cables failed..." He didn't finish the sentence. Noah didn't need him to. He'd been inside. He'd felt those cables snapping one by one. Every decision he'd made in those hours, rewiring the generator, the free dive, climbing the escape tube, had been a gamble against time running out. "Dr. Chen called too," the doctor said. "Your supervisor. He wants to debrief you about what happened. But I told him it could wait until you're recovered." Chen, the research program, the funding that was already being pulled. Noah realized he didn't care anymore. 6 months of data was gone, but he was here. That was the only result that mattered. Noah left Auckland Hospital 3 days later with a clean bill of health and instructions to avoid deep diving for at least 6 months. The nitrogen levels in his bloodstream had normalized. His lungs had recovered from the salt water. The electrical burns on his hand would heal without scarring. Physically, he was fine. Mentally, he was still processing what had happened 200 feet underwater. Sarah picked him up in her car. She didn't say much during the drive, just glanced at him occasionally like she was confirming he was real. Emma sat in the back seat, unusually quiet. "Your apartment's still paid through the end of the month," Sarah said, "but Emma wanted you to come stay with us for a few days, if you're okay with that." Noah turned to look at his daughter in the rearview mirror. "I'd like that." Emma's face lit up. "Really? You're not going back to the ocean?" "Not for a while." Noah had made that decision in the hyperbaric chamber. "I talked to Dr. Chen yesterday, told him I'm done with field research. I'm taking a teaching position at the university instead." Sarah's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Noah, you don't have to make drastic changes just because—" "I almost died," Noah interrupted, "and when I thought I wouldn't make it out, all I could think about was Emma, not my career, not proving anything to anyone. Just her." He looked back at his daughter. "I've been a terrible father. I chose work over you for 2 years. That stops now." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "You mean it?" "I mean it." They drove in silence for a while. Then Emma asked, "What was it like, being trapped down there?" Noah considered lying, making it sound less terrifying, but Emma deserved the truth. "It was the scariest thing I've ever experienced," he said. "The quake hit, and suddenly everything I thought I knew didn't matter. I had to rewire electrical systems underwater, which could have killed me. I had to hold my breath for over 3 minutes twice. Every decision was choosing between 2 bad options." "But you made it out," Emma said. "Barely. If the Coast Guard hadn't been nearby, I would have drowned 5 feet from the surface." "You got smart," Sarah said. "The rescue diver told me what you did, opening that escape hatch manually. Most people would have panicked and died." Noah shook his head. "I did panic, multiple times, but I had Navy training and I had a reason to keep fighting." He looked at Emma. "You were that reason." They pulled into Sarah's driveway, the house Noah had lived in before the divorce, before he'd chosen research grants over family dinners. Emma unbuckled her seatbelt and leaned forward. "Can we watch a movie tonight, like we used to?" "Yeah," Noah said, his throat tight. "We can do that." Sarah caught his eye, gave him a small nod. This was his second chance, his opportunity to prove he'd learned something from nearly dying at the bottom of the Pacific. He wasn't going to waste it. 2 weeks later, Noah stood in front of his first undergraduate class at the University of Auckland, Marine Biology 101. 43 students stared at him with varying degrees of interest. "My name is Dr. Noah Ellis," he began. 2 weeks ago, I was trapped in a collapsing underwater research station during a magnitude 7.8 earthquake. I had to rewire a flooded electrical system, hold my breath for over 3 minutes twice, and climb 200 feet through a flooding escape tube to survive. The room went silent. Every student was paying attention now. Noah pulled up a photo on the projector, the Kermadec station before the quake. "This was my home for 6 months. I was studying deep-sea amphipods that most people don't even know exist." He clicked to the next slide. Sonar imagery of the collapsed station, twisted metal, crushed modules. "This is what it looks like now. 6 months of research, all gone in 12 seconds. A student in the front row raised her hand. "But you survived. That's what matters, right?" "That's exactly what matters," Noah said. "And it took me almost dying to understand that. I spent 2 years choosing research over my daughter, missing her birthday parties, school plays, everything that mattered. I told myself I was doing important work." He paused, looking at the faces in front of him. "Here's what I learned trapped in that station. When you think you're going to die, you don't think about your publications or your research grants. You think about the people you love and whether you've been there for them." Another student spoke up. "So you're saying we shouldn't pursue marine biology?" "No, I'm saying pursue it with balance. Do the research, make the discoveries, but don't sacrifice the people who matter to do it." Noah clicked to another slide, a photo Emma had taken last weekend of them at the beach. This is my daughter Emma. She's 9. For the past 2 years, she's barely known me. I was always underwater or writing grant proposals. I missed 2 years of her life. He looked at the class. Don't make my mistakes. The ocean will always be here, but the people you love won't wait forever. When the class ended, 3 students stayed behind with questions. Not about coursework, about how he'd stayed calm during the crisis, how he'd made decisions under pressure. Noah answered honestly. He'd been terrified. He'd made mistakes. He'd gotten lucky. But he'd also drawn on training and the knowledge that someone was waiting for him. That night, Emma helped him grade papers at Sarah's kitchen table. "Dad," she said as they finished, "are you happy now?" Noah set down his pen and looked at his daughter. Really looked at her, the way her hair fell across her face when she concentrated, the gap where she'd lost a tooth last month, all the small changes he'd missed. "Yeah," he said, "I am." 6 months after the Kermadec station collapse, Noah stood on the beach with Emma, watching the sunset paint the Pacific orange and gold. The same ocean that had nearly killed him. He didn't fear it anymore. Respected it, yes. But fear had given way to understanding. "Tell me the story again," Emma said. "The part where you had to fix the electricity underwater." Noah smiled. "I've told you that story so many times. But I like hearing you tell it." "Okay," Noah said. "The backup generator was in the lower bay, which was flooding. I had to reset 3 circuit breakers. The bottom breaker was underwater, and touching it could have electrocuted me. So you wrapped it in electrical tape," Emma continued, "and you grabbed it anyway. I didn't have a choice. Without power, I couldn't open the doors." Emma looked up at him. "Were you scared?" "Terrified, every single second. I was more scared than I've ever been." "But you didn't give up." "No," Noah said, "because I kept thinking about you, about how I'd promised to call you and hadn't, about how I'd missed so much of your life. I wasn't going to let that be the last thing between us." They walked along the waterline. The university had offered Noah a permanent faculty position. Better pay than field research, normal hours, summers off. He'd accepted immediately. Dr. Chen had tried to convince him to reconsider, told him he was throwing away a brilliant career, that the amphipod discovery had generated interest from 3 major research institutions. Noah had declined. Let someone else make that discovery. "Dad," Emma's voice pulled him back. "Next weekend is my school science fair. I'm doing a project on bioluminescence. Will you help me?" "Of course. What do you need?" "Just you there. I want you to see what I've been working on." Something in her voice made Noah's chest tighten. This was what he'd been missing. Science fair projects and homework help, and just being there. "I'll be there," Noah said. "Front row, I promise." "You keep your promises now," Emma said. Not a question, just fact. Something that had changed in the 6 months since he'd nearly died. They turned back toward the parking lot where Sarah was waiting. Noah took one last look at the Pacific. Somewhere out there, 200 feet down, the ruins of Kermadec Station sat on the seamount. His research, his old life. He didn't miss any of it. The ocean had taught him its final lesson. Some things were worth dying for, but more things were worth living for. And the people you loved, those were the things that mattered when everything else was stripped away. Noah had survived the depths, but he'd found his life on the surface. The nightmares came less frequently now, once or twice a week instead of every night. Noah would wake gasping, convinced water was filling his lungs, convinced he was back in that escape tube with 40 feet still to climb. Sarah heard him one night and came to check on him. "You okay?" she asked from the doorway. "Yeah, just the dream again." Noah sat up, running his hands through his hair. "Same one. I'm climbing the ladder, and the water keeps rising faster than I can move." Sarah sat on the edge of the bed. "You should talk to someone, a professional." "I did. 3 sessions. The therapist said it's normal. PTSD from a traumatic event. Said it'll fade with time. And if it doesn't," Noah looked at her, "then I'll deal with it. But I'm not going to let bad dreams take away what I gained from almost dying. I'm here. I'm present. I'm the father Emma deserves. That's what matters. Sarah nodded slowly. She told me yesterday you're her favorite person now. That's a direct quote. Noah's throat tightened. Really? Really? You know what you're doing differently. You show up. Every school event. Every little thing that matters to her. You're there. Sarah stood to leave, then paused. I never thought I'd say this, but I'm glad you went through what you did. Not because I wanted you to suffer, but because it brought you back to us. After she left, Noah lay awake thinking about the station, about the 12 seconds that changed everything, about the choices he'd made in those hours of crisis. Every one of them had been about survival, about getting home, about keeping a promise to his daughter. He'd kept that promise, and he'd keep making new ones. If this story meant something to you, drop a comment and share it. It helps the next person find their way here.